So, as expected, the Iraqi government is not very happy with the United States over their attack on Kataib Hezbollah, which is one of the many militia groups that make up the popular mobilization units. As I explained yesterday, the PMU is a part of the Iraqi government. They are sort of, I guess, maybe you could call them like a reserve force or a national guard to the Iraqi government. And so by attacking the PMU, the U.S. Committed an act of war against Iraq. So we're getting more details now about the lead-up to this whole strike that happened, what was it, Sunday now, that I talked about yesterday. And apparently Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, called up the acting Prime Minister, who is, what is his name, Abdul-mahdi, that's his last name, is hyphenated. And this is the guy who resigned after the protests over the last few months that were going on in Iraq, which, were pretty bloody. A lot of people died and were generally anti-establishment. Well, he hasn't been able to find anybody to take over yet. They haven't been able to form a new government, so even though he has resigned, he is still the acting prime minister. And so Esper called him up and said, hey, we want to do this strike on Kataib Hezbollah. And he said, no, you can't do that. You don't have our permission. Please don't do that, because it would cause a lot of political problems for us. We don't want to be stepped on all over by the U.S. That's already, part of the reason why he resigned is because, this Abdul-Mahdi guy is seen as being too influenced by foreign powers. That was a big part of the protests in Iraq. People were very upset about foreigners influencing their country, whether it be Iran or the United States, which apparently Iraq now is becoming a sort of a battleground between those two countries over, trying to influence and control it. And so Esper basically said, go to hell. We don't care what you think. You don't control your country. This is our job. We're going to do whatever the hell we want because we can. And so if you don't want to go along with it, well then, sucks to be you. And so the U.S. Carried out these strikes as they intended, and it's created a whole lot of chaos in Iraq. People are furious. People do not like having their country bombed by a foreign power. And so what are Westerners, the intelligentsia, the wizards of smart, the people who, follow foreign policy in the United States, what are they saying about this blatant and flagrant violation of Iraq's sovereignty? Well, they're saying, sovereignty is something that's earned, and it's something that only responsible countries have. You're not entitled to do whatever you want. Essentially, sovereignty is something you only get if you make the right decisions. But if you make the wrong decisions, well, then you don't have any sovereignty, which is a very snobbish and highfalutin way of saying that if you do not do the United States' bidding, well, then you don't have sovereignty. And of course, by that definition, sovereignty just means that you're an American puppet. These people are coming right out and admitting that they do not believe in sovereignty. They don't believe that Iraq has the right to determine what goes on, within its own borders. Which, by the way, it wouldn't even be sovereignty in and of itself. That would be suzerainty, because you can have control over your internal affairs without controlling your external affairs. It's pretty clear that Iraq is not free to make its own foreign policy, but one would think that it might be even if it doesn't have real sovereignty, if it isn't a real independent country that is reliant on the U.S., that they might have suzerainty, meaning control over their internal affairs, and the U.S. won't even grant them that. Apparently Iraq, by the U.S., is still regarded as a colony, or at least an occupied territory of some sort. So I just find it funny to see all of these, neoliberals in Washington, those sorts of types, expose themselves as hypocrites who don't believe their own bullshit when they say that, America just wants a world, where countries can make their own decisions, and we believe in freedom and all this crap, and sovereignty is very important, and Russia's so bad because they violated Ukraine's sovereignty. That's what we really don't like about Russia. It has nothing to do with, with any of this other stuff. It has to do with, we agree that the countries should have entire control over their own affairs, and that Russia interfering in Ukraine like that, or Russia interfering in America's election, that's a violation of our sovereignty. Blah blah blah. Clearly, none of them believe that. They're making it very clear that if you don't believe in our ideas, sovereignty goes out the window. So the State Department has come out and has essentially said that, and I quote, Iraq has shown its true colors, and they are quite disgusted by Iraq's response. They're saying, how dare you not get upset at Iran when we tell you to blame Iran? Because, I haven't even mentioned it today, but the U.S. is blaming this Iraqi militia and saying, well, they're basically Iran, and that they're the same as Iran. This is Iran, and Iran attacked us. They're saying that this Iraqi militia attacked the base near Kirkuk, an Iraqi government base, by the way, meaning the allies of this militia. They're saying that this militia attacked their own allies without offering any evidence. And then they're saying that this militia, they're Iran, and that Iran also attacked, their own allies, the Iraqi government. And, it's when I see stories like this that I know nobody in America has any idea, is going on, that, you would ordinarily never see in the mainstream media. It makes me realize this is why people around the world hate us. This is why the U.S. has so many enemies. This is why you see folks burning American flags. They don't hate your freedom, okay? The recent terrorist in Pensacola, said those words exactly. That George Bush lied to us when he said, well, the only reason why any of these folks could have a problem with peaceful old America, who was always minding our own business, it's just they hate our freedom. They don't like us. And it's like, no, they hate you because you go and bomb their countries, because you kill their sons and fathers and brothers. And in many cases, wives, mothers, sisters, and children, too. Don't forget the collateral damage. But here we have a very black and white example of America going into a country that is supposed to be an ally, that is supposed to be a friend, and saying, we're going to do whatever the hell we want to your country and to your people, and we don't give a damn what you, the elected government, have to say about it. This is why there are people in Baghdad burning American flags today. Of course, if you see that image, they'll probably roll clips of it on Fox News and say, oh, look, here are folks in Iraq who just hate our freedom. Look at all these terrible radical Muslims. They just, they want to impose Sharia law on us. That's why they're burning our flag. No, they're burning their flag because they want you to go home, because they want you to leave them alone, because they want us to stop killing them. So now, after all this, the PMU, which again is an arm of the Iraqi government, so its leader, I believe, is considered an employee of the government, is a government official. He is vowing that the PMU will retaliate against the American troops who did this. And, quite interestingly, again, Kataib Hezbollah, who the U.S. bombed here, is just one member of the PMU. There are many groups that make up the PMU, but the leader of the PMU right now is the former leader of Kataib Hezbollah. So he came out of this group that was just bombed. So of course he, as the commander of the PMU, is going to say, hey, we have to avenge my fallen brethren. And so in doing so, the military has painted a target on the back of all 5,000 U.S. troops who are currently stationed in Iraq. Because all of these Iraqi soldiers that the U.S. has been allied with for years, including the PMU, by the way. The U.S. fought alongside the PMU against ISIS. The PMU was really the big. They were the major tip of the spear when it came to fighting ISIS. They all now will regard the Americans around them as enemies. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a spat of so-called green-on-blue attacks in Iraq here soon. Now, perhaps in Iraq it's not quite like Afghanistan, to where, for the most part, you'll have Americans around Americans, not individual Americans embedded with the Iraqis. But I guarantee you, they will find opportunities to kill American soldiers. They at least want to get, a similar body count to what the U.S. got on them, and that was 25 killed. And from there, of course, things will only escalate. Now, Kataib Hezbollah, as their name implies, they are an affiliate of Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Nasrallah came out and made some fancy video, and it was speaking in the background, talking very tough and showing videos of missiles and saying we're going to fight the infidels and all this. And I'm not too worried about Nasrallah. He is a politician in practice. So, he does say a lot of stuff, but so I wouldn't be too worried about, Hezbollah in Lebanon doing anything to hurt the U.S. But the PMU, making an enemy of them, I think that's a very serious danger. And frankly, the days of the U.S. troop presence in Iraq are numbered. And so maybe this is, that's kind of a bright side here, is that this will lead to a push by the Iraqi parliament to get the Americans out of Iraq once and for all. There's a coalition forming now in the Iraqi parliament. Even Muqtada al-Sadr, who apparently is kind of a maverick, doesn't always go along with the other Shiites, is saying he's going to work with whoever possible to try and kick the U.S. out. Because obviously, the U.S. is not a friend of Iraq. If they're bombing their troops, that's not an ally. So you don't want to have these people in their country. They're a threat. They're very clearly a threat. I would feel threatened if I lived in Iraq. I would feel threatened by the U.S. troop presence. I would want to make it as hard as possible for the U.S. to kill me and my friends. I wouldn't want to give them free room and board. To really get a feel for, what the people in Iraq must be feeling. Imagine if, I don't know, Germany or somebody. It's hard to imagine since the U.S. doesn't really have a power that's bigger than it that, has power over it. But imagine if, say, Germany or France or somebody came over here and bombed some, private militia out in the middle of Texas or something and said, oh, well, those guys were Russian puppets. And so now, you've got 30 American men that are dead. And, you've got buildings blown up all across Texas. Do you think that the American people would be satisfied with the French government just saying, oh, well, those were Russian puppets? So we had a right to bomb them. And even though your government told us not to murder its civilians or its own people, we decided that it was better to kill them. Do you not think that would radicalize thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans against France? Do you not think that there would be countless Americans who would be willing to commit violent acts against, French people or the French government and French military? Of course it would. These people would be righteously mad to have their countrymen slain by these foreign tyrants. And that's exactly the sort of feeling that so many Iraqis have felt over the last couple days. Make no mistake that this attack has, certainly, you say, oh, well, they killed 25 terrorists. Very good. Well, it's created a lot more than that. They've created a whole hell of a lot more than 25. There are a lot of men now, more than there already were, who would be willing to kill an American soldier if they got the chance. You think that the lefties or folks in this country are mad and hate Russians, because they hacked our election. Oh, I hate those Russians. Yeah, their hatred for Russia is nothing compared to the hatred that a man would feel for an empire that came in and killed his family or his neighbors or whoever. If you want to talk about foreign interference, buying Facebook ads, what a complete joke. I cannot stomach even speaking to people about domestic U.S. politics when I look at the rest of the world. I'm truly appalled by the ignorance of those around me. And the sad thing is, it's not even really their fault. I was ignorant for most of my life anyway, because, you really have to seek this kind of information out. They don't tell us this in the American media. Like I said, I read the CNN story on these strikes yesterday, and it was very, it was not, there was no sense of controversy in it at all. It was just, oh yes, U.S. bombs Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. The U.S., retaliated against them for, Iranian aggression. Yes, all very cut and dry. The way it was worded, oh, who could possibly oppose this unless you're a crazy terrorist? Very well-written State Department propaganda. So I'm sure this situation isn't over. I think things will get even worse. The relations between Iraq and the U.S. are sure to deteriorate further. And so if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.